welcome back to another episode of Us Anxious Folk. I am here with a fellow podcaster, Flo. Flo is an event organizer and a host with Grow with the Flow, a podcast exploring how to grow with more presence, openness, and intention. And he's also my tech support because we've just had a lot of issues and he's he's helped me a lot. So thank you, Flo. Thanks for being here.
Hey Lauren, good to see you again.
So tell me your anxiety story.
Wow, my anxiety story. I'd love to. So I think it goes back around 10 years, maybe a decade now, when I've started noticing uh, these feelings of anxiety a little bit more. It's toilet anxiety that I mostly struggle with, agoraphobia, as you know, as you also touched on, of course. And it's something like the earlier memories were always in situations that felt like a little bit stressful in the sense that maybe I couldn't use the bathroom if I needed to. Like I remember boarding a plane, that was quite typical, or like being in taxis. These were moments when I was always a little bit overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And particular one scenario, which is probably the earliest memory of this anxiety journey, where I really noticed how the anxiety is impacting my life, was when I was here in Malta, where I've been living for just over a decade now, and we were looking at a new apartment with my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And as we were like looking at apartments and making appointments with the real estate agents, I felt already like a little bit nervous. Maybe, I wasn't in the best health at the time. I don't remember, but I could already feel like my gut was getting a little bit anxious. And just the idea of looking at like a bunch of apartments, I had this weird thought like, well, what if I need to use the bathroom while we're looking at these apartments? And I felt like even though all of these apartments have at least one bathroom that I could potentially use, I thought, oh, it might be inappropriate to
Hmm.
ask, a real estate agent if I could use a bathroom of an apartment that I may or may not rent out.
Yeah.
So I think that's when it really highlighted this the sensation of inconvenience that sometimes kind of swings in with the anxiety. That it's more like it really, like, now in hindsight, I recognize that it's never been about needing a toilet. It was always about being an inconvenience or
Hmm.
being inappropriate or anything that, like, just creating, maybe even putting attention on me when I didn't really need to or so.
Hmm.
And that's something that I've been kind of living with for years. And yeah, and all of these moments, anxiety, etc. And I mean, boarding a plane or waiting until the plane would take off because I would feel like I may not just, use a bathroom while I'm boarding or while we're waiting to taxi and to take off.
Hmm.
And it really kind of kept on getting worse because now I would find myself in the situation whenever I was back in a situation where I previously experienced anxiety, I would, obviously find myself kind of coming back to those thoughts.
Yeah.
So for me, over years, it kind of kept getting more intense and more intense. And then it was in a relationship a few years later, that then also happened to be during COVID when things got quite extreme for me. Because in that relationship, obviously, maybe with the general anxiety of COVID and the unknown adding to it,
Hmm.
I could really feel how this anxiety was kind of getting worse and worse to the point where I would not be able to just join my partner for a sunset trip somewhere to the beach because I felt like, well, what if I'm somewhere out in nature and I may not use the bathroom? And it was always this embarrassment of having to use the bathroom. Because
Hmm.
obviously, if you need to pee somewhere, that's one thing. But if you need to poop, then suddenly the topic becomes so much more awkward, even though it's essentially the same bodily function.
Yeah.
But it's this bizarre thing suddenly, right? And yeah, this was also the first time when I felt really struggling with this anxiety. I could really feel how it's impacted my life tremendously, how it impacted the relationship. And I think my lack of understanding of how I'm dealing with this, plus, the lack of ability to communicate it properly with my partner, then ended up leading to a lot of arguments and eventually, I think, also contributed to the end of that relationship.
Hmm.
So, um, when that then all came to a close, I a few months later surprised my mother to take her to New York. Actually, I had at the job, there was like an annual bonus that came out. I was like, oh, great, I can take my mom to New York. She always dreamed about going to New York. It was like her life's dream. So I thought, okay, let's do that. And we went to New York. I was there a few years earlier, so I already kind of seen all the sites, but I was like, it doesn't matter. I'll gladly repeat that trip and show my mom around to all the sites and everything. We stayed at a friend's apartment,
Mm.
who was supposed to be in Europe, but she ended up staying in the apartment as well. But she was so kind, she slept on the couch. So I had like an air mattress that was always like deflating throughout the night. So I woke up quite uncomfortable, like with a half inflated mattress.
Yeah.
And during that trip, that's when things got really crazy with my anxiety. I think it was a combination of things, like not sleeping well on a half inflated mattress,
Mm.
uh, the jet lag, and not having like my normal routine of like working out or doing yoga or something felt a little bit more difficult on holidays. Like I guess it's for most people, like your routines are often completely shook the moment you travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I was again, all this traveling in trains, in the subway or in taxis, the anxiety was obviously always kind of getting triggered. And it was one I talked very openly with my mum about those emotions, those feelings. But it was one day in particular where we were supposed to go to the south, to the Brooklyn Bridge. We just stayed in the north of Manhattan.
Mm.
And already on the way to the south of Manhattan. So in the subway, it was super packed. There was like this shrill voice from the conductor yelling at people to get out of the door so it could close. And
Mm.
that all of these thoughts already kind of triggered me and made it quite difficult. Like it was so difficult at the time in my life
Yeah.
that even going from the apartment to the restaurant where we usually had breakfast, which was literally at the end of the block, I
Hmm.
was so stressed. Like I needed to make sure that I go to the bathroom at least once or twice before leaving.
Mm.
And then I was, almost worried that I'm, may not be able to hold it until 5 minutes later when I'm at a restaurant in a shopping mall with plenty of toilets again. So that was really at a point where the moment I would step out from any environment where I knew that I would have access to a bathroom, my mind was already like, what if, what if, what if?
Mm.
So even like planning a day trip was, yeah,
Nightmare.
wild, was an absolute nightmare. So, but of course, I'm there with my mum to fulfill her live stream. So I felt like, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
And we go down, and I had this app that shows you where public bathrooms are available. And I'm essentially constantly looking at it, just checking where I am, just in case. And then
Yeah.
we're somewhere in the financial district in an area where there just happened to be no app kind of showing, nothing showing for like a public bathroom on the app.
Hmm.
And that's when this crazy panic kind of kicked in. Because I
Mm.
was like, well, what if I can't find something now? And then I just remembered there was like a pub, a few blocks down. And I basically told my mom, like, sorry, I need to go back. I need to use the bathroom. And I started like running there quite fast and getting there. I'm going into that bar and I'm asking the staff if I could use the bathroom. They show me to the back and I go into the bathroom and I open a stall. I sit down and nothing. Like it didn't even have to go.
Mm.
And that was a moment when I got already on the toilet. I texted my therapist to kind of because the thoughts were still so clear of what happened. Because I was like, okay, I need to kind of document this because this is just silly now, right? And I walk out and I just sit down because at this point, obviously, I'm exhausted. These panic attacks, these anxiety attacks, they're so draining.
Mm.
And I'm sitting there just kind of like almost like catching my breath. And my mum was sitting there and drinking her coffee or whatever. And I could really feel like this pressure in the air because I've been talking to my mum about this, obviously sharing my experience quite openly. But for her, I could really sense and feel that helplessness on her end,
Mm.
seeing her son struggling with this invisible struggle,
Mm.
these mental health issues, they're so invisible. It's so hard to grasp, right? If you're not suffering from them, it's really difficult to kind of understand and comprehend what someone else might be going through.
Yeah.
So that's when I felt I completely kind of broke down and I cried and I sat there and I felt so overwhelmed with this anxiety. And I told myself, like, what is going on? Like, how am I not able to live a normal life and constantly, whatever I would do, the moment I step out the door, I would think about where toilets are, like what I might need to do. Like this anxiety and this kind of constant thought about finding a bathroom or maybe needing a bathroom, etc.,
Yeah.
dominated my life so much that I thought if I'm not able to just travel to New York with my mom, where I thought in my head, I thought this should be like the easiest type of kind of trip that one could have. It's in an English speaking country that is very modern. There's, restaurants, hotels,
Yeah.
whatever, bars everywhere. So I thought like if I can't do it here
Mm.
in New York, which in my mind was the easiest type, right? I think ironically it's probably the hardest because big
Yeah.
city and like now
Yes.
in hindsight I could probably realize, well, I might have been a bit off there. But at the time, I thought if I can't do it in New York, how could I ever do it in Bali? Now, I don't know why I thought Bali. I think the only reason I thought of Bali at the time was because friends who did go to Indonesia and to Bali, they told about Bali belly. Very
Yeah.
classic. If you travel to Southeast Asia, that is quite common, obviously, for the Western flora and fauna to be a little bit shook. And I felt like, well, because that is justified anxiety. If you have Bali belly and you're stuck in a taxi, then you're allowed to be worried about having to, not
Yeah.
being able to find a bathroom. I thought to myself, but it's also Bali really represented the unknown, different cultures. In many ways, it, represented the literal outside of my comfort zone. Because at this point, I've only ever traveled largely Europe, maybe Turkey, Egypt, and then New York and Canada, essentially. So that was really the extent of my travel. So I've never really been to very exotic places, let's say.
Hmm.
And yeah, I had this sheer kind of panic and at this point, just like devastation. I feel like if I'm not able to live my life here, how could I ever live this life, like travel to Bali, which obviously represented this struggle that I will never be able to live a normal life or explore things that are really worth seeing or like go into different adventures, step out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was we then went home and that day and I told my mom, okay, I this has been so intense, I need to just rest. And ironically, it ended up being really beautiful for her because
Mm.
then she was like, okay, cool, you take it easy. I'll just go for a walk. So now my mum came back, I think a couple of hours later, and she was so excited because she was like, I can't believe that I was just like running around Times Square by myself. I never thought that I would be in New York. And obviously, together with me, she just felt at some point she sent me this hilarious meme of um, someone like how it feels like when you organize a trip and one person is always like doing everything, and then the other person is just
Yeah.
like a little kid just waddling
Just
behind, and
along for the
that's how she
ride.
felt like.
Yeah.
And in that moment, she was doing everything by herself,
Mm.
going around and exploring, and she was super excited about it. And I think looking back at it, that all added to the anxiety, the jet lag, the trip, the sleep, and also that I felt like there's this pressure of looking,
Mm.
you know, organizing a trip for my mom and making sure that she has a beautiful experience. I think this all added to the stress.
Yeah.
And and yeah, but that moment, because at this point I've been suffering from anxiety for years
Hmm.
and dealing with it, but it always felt like a little bit more silently, but it got louder and louder and it really kind of exploded in New York.
Mm.
And it became so loud that I couldn't stop listening to it. So over the next few months, I started like thinking more and more like, okay, what can I do here? Started reading up about it more and learning about it, the connection to the vagus nerve to your nervous system and how it impacts your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. So I thought for me, the only way is around like learning about it, like learning really what's happening here.
Mm.
And then as fate, I guess, wanted it, or as the universe had a plan for me, towards the end of the year, my company needed me to relocate to Gibraltar in the south of Spain. And I just felt like Gibraltar is such a small country, it's just a rock. And I felt like it's not what I need in my life. So I said that I can't really see myself moving to Gibraltar. So we agreed amicably to just part ways,
Hmm.
which meant that I think it was the end of January was my last day, and that was it. I was off. and then they gave me a redundancy, and I thought, okay, I can just like look for a new job.
Yeah.
And then I had this feeling, it really felt like the feeling probably came from the same place where the anxiety usually sits, where I thought, or I could just travel to Bali and just see how that may work out. Because at this point, for like 4, 5, 6 months or so, I've been actively, obviously, processing this anxiety and learning about it. And then I thought, like, oh, I might just do that.
Hmm.
A friend of mine has been in Bali, so it kind of like planted the seed
Yeah.
in my mind, I suppose. And then that's what I did. I just booked a trip and I went to Bali, and I ended up being 2 months in Bali and then another month in Thailand, and really started. And I felt like that trip really started a whole new life for me. This was 2 years ago, and like looking back at this period, it was definitely um, probably the most life-changing part of my life at this point. And it was really like it wasn't easy. The trip was not easy, as you can imagine. I think it took less than 72 hours, and I got Bali belly straight away. And
Such
it
sensitive
was
stomachs.
it was, I mean, this was as much of a self-fulfilling prophecy as I've ever seen.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, but then I was tough. Like I was knocked out for a couple of days. But then I got through that anyway. And then for the rest of the trip, it was still something that was on my mind, but it ended up being such a beautiful trip with so many amazing memories. And what was really fascinating at the end of this trip, then I went to Thailand for a couple of weeks. And then from Thailand, I looked at flights home back to Germany to spend some time with my family. And there was one flight from like Thailand via China to France to Munich. It was hugely inconvenient, but it was cheap enough. So I was like, okay, let's do that trip.
Mm.
And then one day before the trip was supposed to happen, they said, oh, there's an issue. The flight from Thailand to China is actually happening 24 hours earlier than originally scheduled. So you can either like take that flight or cancel the whole thing. I thought, well, now canceling everything because I thought I was clever and I booked the connection from France to Munich separately, which wasn't clever at all. But because now I was like, well, if I cancel the first leg to
Yeah.
France and get my money back, because obviously that's what they would offer me, but
Yeah.
I couldn't refund the second leg because I booked it separately in a separate booking. So I was like, ah, God, I'm okay, whatever. I'll just spend 24 hours in China, I suppose. So
Hmm.
I flew to China and had to like it was a real struggle because suddenly your phone doesn't work as well. There's no Google connection, right? Like the internet is a bit of a black box, it seems like even
Mm.
like getting into the country because I there was this weird situation when I needed to kind of in order to log into the public Wi-Fi or the open Wi-Fi, I needed to have like a phone number
Mm.
or so, but I didn't
Yeah.
have a Chinese phone number. So they
Yeah,
said,
of
well, but
course.
you can also do it via email. But obviously
Yeah.
I didn't have access to my email because I didn't have
The
internet.
internet.
So it
Yeah.
was like a catch-22 situation. And eventually I managed to sort everything out and get my visa. And then I got getting to the hotel was wild because I booked the hotel very close to the airport.
Mhm.
And I got in a taxi and already like I'm asking them like, can I pay by card? And they said like, no, no, cash only with barely any English.
Mm.
Then I found an ATM on the other side of the airport going all the way. It was in Guangzhou, so it's quite big.
Mm.
And I found an ATM. I go to different taxi stand and I get in a taxi and I try to talk to them. They don't speak a word of English. So I just show him the map where we are in the airport and where the hotel is. It was literally like up, right, up. Very easy.
Yeah.
10-minute ride. And the taxi driver looks at me, cigarette hanging out of his mouth, like with his hands and feet gesturing quite aggressively for some reason.
Yeah.
And another taxi's next to him through the open window. He shouts to him, almost saying, like, you see that? You see this guy? Like, how dare he step into my car and ask me to drive him somewhere? That's how it felt like.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. At this point, again, like anxiety was still a topic for me, right? So I was like, this is really overwhelming. I don't know what to do. I said, okay, just let me. I got out. I got all my suitcase, a backpack, and I was like, okay, let me just find if there's an airport hotel right here where I can just walk to, whatever. And I found one, and I went there, and then the next day I went to the airport again and said like, okay, I have the whole day now until the evening when my flight is.
Mm,
Let's go into the city. And I can't use Google Maps to sort out public transportation, so I'm trying to study the map on at the airport, which is in English, and I'm like trying to figure something out, and I managed to. And I already remember I sent a picture to a friend of mine and be like bit of a let's see how that challenge goes today with my anxiety, like being here in the city. And it ended up being pretty okay. But the most amazing moment happened. It started pouring down heavily. So at some point, the city was underwater, and uh, the city was empty. Like everyone was kind of going somewhere inside. And then it slowly stopped raining. And I'm in the middle of this financial district in the um, downtown in Guangzhou. And I'm walking around, and the city is empty,
mm,
right? And I'm looking around, and I'm surrounded by all of these skyscrapers. And then I had this moment of just silence and peacefulness inside of me and around me. And it was like it took me back to New York, surrounded by all of these skyscrapers, this massive city, but it was empty, right? And I thought this was in April, and the panic attack happened in May, the year before.
mm.
So I just stood there and thought, like, this is incredible. Like, not even a year ago, I sat here in New York with this panic attack that I'd never really experienced to that extent. And I thought, like, how could I ever live my life with this anxiety? And not even a year later, I was standing in the middle of China, somewhere in this financial district,
By
completely
yourself?
alone. It's so bizarre, by
Yeah.
myself, without all of those things that I thought would make it easy in New York,
Yeah.
phone and language and just being able to pay with your card and all of those things. And in China, it stripped me of all of those things that I thought meant safety and security.
Mm,
And I stood there and I thought, wow, like it was again, I was just sobbing standing there. But at this point, from a place of kind of gratefulness
mm,
and love, because I realized even though by no means I'm past it now that I've conquered this anxiety or I beat it, I felt like there is a way to live with this. Maybe you have to make compromises. Maybe you have to find a way to, adjust a certain situation. Or maybe there's a situation where you have to excuse yourself and, make a alternative decision. But it really felt like, okay, there is a way for me to still live my life
mm,
and not have it be kind of dominated by my anxiety.
mm,
And since then, I've been able to travel back to Southeast Asia and make incredible experiences and really kind of challenge myself um, and really learn how to live with this anxiety. So yeah, now it's been just 2.5 years, I think, after I started this Bali trip, and it's been an intense period
mm,
for sure. But I definitely can see that going through this really stressful period has now allowed me to gain kind of control back of my life.
mm. Yeah. Firstly, I want to tell you that you explain that so beautifully. Like your perspective on it is really um, very poetic, the way you talk about it all, which I know is can be different when you're in it. It's always good to look back and go, oh yeah. Um, but I related so much to so many parts of your story, but especially that feeling of despair. And, when everything gets too loud and you have this fear that you've had for quite a while and it's sort of been building and building and building, and then you have this, you know, this like crisis point, like you in New York
Mm.
and, running to that pub and just that moment where you're like, I can't do this anymore. Um, what at that point, like, what was there a sense of like, I have to do something about this now, or I'm not going to be able to I'm not going to ha be able to comfortably exist? Or was it just that that breaking point of like, I don't know what to do? Or do you think that's where that sort of drive to like beat it came? Not beat it, but, you know, attempt to
Tackle it,
overcome.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that this moment of like complete despair and helplessness has really kind of challenged me to be like, okay, but what are you going to do about this? Because then it invited me almost to reflect on how things have been.
Yeah.
Because as you're kind of experiencing anxiety throughout your life, I think it's something that maybe in some cases often becomes like, well, that's just how it is. That's just part of it almost, you know?
Mm.
Like when people say before they go on stage, I remember I was in a band when I was a teenager, and every time before I needed to go on stage, I had to pee. Every time, even if I just like I was empty, I didn't drink all morning, but it's just like, it's just stage fright or whatever. It's part of it. If you don't have it, it doesn't mean you're excited enough. Like people could
Yeah.
easily, it's so common, I think, for all of us to just pretend or tell ourselves, like, well, that's just how it's supposed to be. It's always been like that, and we're great at doing that, right? And
Mm.
we're the best at bullshitting ourselves. So
Yeah.
I think for the longest time, I just said, like, well, that's just part of it. When I travel, I'm anxious. And I found ways of like, I told people, like, just don't talk to me. I want to sit down, like, read a book or something. I was kind of finding different ways to be more present and out of my mind because I felt like I can't let, I was really worried that like, it felt like a domino stone. If I tip the first one over, like that avalanche is just like starting and my mind starts kind of building more and more and more. So I was like, I can't let that happen. So I was in a zone. I was probably being a bit of a dick to people when I said like, don't talk to me, like don't touch me, when they obviously only meant well.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I think that crisis point really meant there's like, but what are you gonna do about it now? You've
Yeah.
been dealing with this, like, and it was always bad, but that moment in particular, and I think it was maybe even important that my mum was there with me. If it would have been a friend or a partner, I think the situation might have been quite different. I think there is obviously a very special relationship between a mother and their child, a mother and their son.
Mm.
So sitting there and seeing my mum experiencing this as well,
Mm.
maybe even told me like that I need to do this, not only for myself, but also for my mum, for my family, for the people around me. I mean,
Mm.
I've seen how much it impacted my ex-girlfriend at this point and how it impacted our relationship. And I know that I contributed a lot to it with my anxiety.
Mm.
So I think that, yeah, this crisis point has really become like the beginning, if you
Mm.
want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that about, the fact that it was with your mum. Maybe you were able to shift something because I think there is that with parents is that kind of that unconditional love, whereas with sometimes romantic partners and friends, it's like there's so much tangled in with, you being anxious and feeling like you're letting them down, or and then them being angry, and it's just there's a lot of emotion. But with a parent, it's like they just love you and they just want the best for you. And it's like you can kind of let yourself be super vulnerable and
Mm.
see yourself the way they see you. Maybe there was like a little bit of softness in you that stopped fighting and just started going, okay, let's open to this.
Oh, absolutely. It's so true. I think in any relationship, and of course, I think even in long-term relationships, there's always a part of you where it can be really difficult to be completely open and vulnerable. I think there's so
Yeah.
many roles that we play in society, and even with friends, with colleagues, or with your partner, there's a certain role that you have to kind of adhere to, that you have to fulfill. As a man, I just have to be strong. I have to be very kind of assertive on what I want, and I need to be able to maybe protect and provide and all of those things. So having some things again so invisible, like mental health anxiety, but not finding a bathroom, which when you tell people about this, a lot of times when I spoke about this, people are like, "Oh, I didn't know this was a thing."
Mm.
So for them, it's something so easy when they're like, a friend of mine, he told me he was. he needed to move from Georgia to Estonia.
Hmm.
And he's been doing quite well for himself. So he was like, okay, but the baby and the cat and all of the stuff that they owned, they were like, okay, actually, we're gonna charter a private plane to fly.
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's swanky, very fancy. But yeah, good on you, of course. If you can afford it, great. So they did that, and they had a private plane. And he said they had so much stuff that they need to kind of move to another country that they were putting luggage and boxes and suitcases everywhere, including the bathroom that was on board. So they said like throughout the flight, that meant the bathroom was basically not really available because
Mm-hmm.
it was just like packed with stuff. And he said as they're like midair, they had to land somewhere to refuel. He said he got really bad diarrhea. And I said, so what did you do? And he said, like, what do you mean? What did I do? Because obviously, imagine with this toilet anxiety, I thought, like,
Yes.
oh my God,
That's the end of the
it's
world.
almost that's the end of the world. Like, how do you handle this?
Yeah.
And he said, like, what do you mean? What did I do? I just held it until we could land and I used the bathroom then. And I was like, oh, uh, okay. That is not an option for me, I felt.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's so that is a very kind of common response from many people around this. So when you're now sharing like this with a partner, and there's even like these dynamics you have in every relationship. Of course, there's a part of the relationship when it's about understanding each other, you're your best friends, you're supporting each other.
Mm.
But there's also a part where you're physically and sexually attracted to each other. And you feel like the moment you open that can of worms to like toilet habits or the moment the topic of pooping comes up, it's like, oh, that's not sexy.
Yeah.
Pooping isn't sexy. So you wonder like, oh, can I let this kind of anxiety and this like trickle into relationship, or would that potentially, you know, kill the spark?
Yeah.
So
It's like
yeah,
it can't
I
be seen in that
definitely
way.
exactly. And I think you're absolutely right that the fact that it was my mother who was there
Mm.
really allowed me to completely let go of all of the fences and all everything that I might have built up otherwise.
Mm. I'm interested in the word you used at the beginning of this interview when you said inconvenience. Um, I've never thought of it that way. I've thought a lot about the shame that is tied into toilet anxiety, the intense feeling of shame. But I talk to me more about this sense of being an inconvenience. Like how did you sort of come to that understanding that that's what a lot of it is?
I think it was in hindsight now I'm recognizing there's these two aspects that I noticed. One was the inconvenience. So I felt like if I'm in like a taxi and I felt like, well, I might have to like ask the taxi driver to the side of the road. Maybe there's someone else behind him and it's potentially causing just inconvenience for others. And
Mm.
and I thought, and I think it plays in with the second part that I recognized in hindsight is not only the inconvenience that I might cause others,
Mm.
but also it felt like the moment it almost felt like a certain commitment in my mind. Because when I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, I may or may not use the bathroom, it's almost like Schrodinger's bowels. I may or may not have to use the bathroom. It felt like I equally in every situation both have to use it and not have to use it, sort of.
Mm.
But the moment I'm I'm saying like, okay, I think I need to use a bathroom now. It's
Yeah.
almost like, okay, now I've committed to it. And
Mm.
now I need to make my way to ask an air hostess if it would be okay to use the bathroom, even if maybe, the seatbelt sign is on, or
Mm.
asking a taxi driver to drive to the side of the road. Ironically, the shame of potentially using a bathroom in public wasn't as much of an issue. The potential shame of pooping your pants was always there,
Mm.
but it was more the inconvenience. Because I thought if I now committed myself, I said, okay, I have to use the bathroom. It almost felt like I've now started something that I won't be able to stop,
Mm.
meaning that it almost felt like I've now started a countdown in my head.
Mm. Mm.
Where I said, okay, now I've said I need to use the bathroom, and that countdown is counting now. It might be counting now from a minute or from 30 seconds, depending on how urgent it really is. But
Okay.
ironically, with this vagus nerve, relation, like you never, you might have not even eaten anything, but that stress is still like impacting your bowels to kind of completely go crazy, man.
Mm,
So then I felt like if I'm now asking others, like, excuse me, I know the seatbelt sign is on, but I might have to use the bathroom.
mm,
Is it okay? Because I'm not an inconvenience to them, which means like if I'm meeting someone who's very kind and very nice, they might be like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Of course, whatever you want. But for many people, it might be like, oh, this is an inconvenience. Sorry, you can't really do this now because not everyone wants to help. Not everyone wants to support. So I felt like
mm,
it probably comes to a question of control. Like I'm almost giving control to someone else because I'm asking for permission. And
mm,
it happened when I was in those situations. So I felt like, oh, I have to use the bathroom now. And I would go and stand up and go to the bathroom in an airplane. And someone would tell me like, oh, excuse me, do you mind sitting down? Because, we're about to land. And I
mm,
would have to tell them like, I'm really sorry, but I need to use the bathroom. It's quite urgent. And even this felt like a bit of shame in there, like like admitting that I have stomach issues or saying like, I know it's inconvenient, but I might have to do it anyway.
mm,
Because there was always this fear, like, what if they say no? What
mm.
if I can't use it? The truth is, it's never been an issue. Because
Yeah.
it's never been an issue. Because even if you have like a stewardess or someone who has a really bad day, as long as you're not coming from a place of like shouting with anger and be like, no, but I need to use the bathroom now. If you just come from a place of compassion and be like, really sorry, this is a little bit uncomfortable for me, but I really need to use the bathroom right now.
Mm,
They would never just tell you like, no, this is not an option.
mm,
It feels like there's always an option, but
mm,
this inconvenience and maybe inadvertently this lack of control
mm.
over the situation, I think that's what I recognized in this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It makes me think about the idea of like people pleasing, like that sense of like I need
Mm.
people to like me. And sorry, it's my bedtime alarm going off. Um, yeah, like I know for me, a lot of it is wanting people to like me and wanting to feel like I'm accepted. And sometimes, I guess somewhere along the way, I tied in this idea that like if I need to use the bathroom and if I'm an inconvenience, then they're not going to like me. And yeah, when I say it out loud, it sounds silly, but I must somewhere believe that, you know? It's wild how much it can um, take hold on you, which I know I keep harping on about the toilet anxiety topic, but I love talking about it. The Bali belly situation. I want to
Yeah.
hear about this because I know that it, all the years you spent thinking about, imagine if that happened, how bad that would be. And I bet that the actual event was nowhere near as bad, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was some of my friends just happened to be in Bali at the same time. So we went out. I think we were surfing. It was on Valentine's Day, actually.
Hmm.
And I think in the Bali waters there in Canggu, the water quality is pretty bad. And we were pretty bad at surfing, so we swallowed a lot of that water.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty exactly like 48 hours later, maybe 24, 48 hours later, when it kind of kicked in. At this point, I just checked in a hostel, but with clever foresight, obviously with an anxiety, I was like, I'm not gonna just have a bed in like a dormitory. I want to have a private room just in case.
Mm.
And that case was, yeah, then happening. Yeah, I in the night it happened, and then for like the next 2 or 3 days, it was in terms like Bali Belly was really bad as an experience
Yeah.
because obviously I couldn't hold anything inside. It was really bad. I had to
Yeah,
go
quite unwell.
quite unwell. Yeah. Um, but it almost like in hindsight again is it was a little bit funny because my friend was going through it at the same time. So we
Mm.
were like chatting a lot with each other, just sharing our misery. And I think what's the saying in English? Misery needs company or
Yes.
so. Yeah,
Loves
that
company. Yeah.
really loves company. That's it. And
Yeah.
that's really how it felt like for me in that moment. So obviously being unwell for like a couple of days was really bad.
Yeah.
And then I had to go to the south of Bali
Mhm.
where we spent some more days. And that was like a 2 or 3 hour taxi ride. And that was for me like, oh, I'm just kind of getting over Bali belly, and now I have to take a taxi.
Mm,
That was a little bit worrying to me. But then I took some Imodium beforehand
mm,
and just made sure that I felt well enough at this point and I wouldn't like maybe eat something and then it worked. And at this point, I was able to like, well, I took the taxi anyway. And like again, at the end, when I eventually was in like those 2 months in Bali, I did so many things and little trips to like the other islands or like up to Ubud and spending around on a scooter, looking at waterfalls and exploring as much as possible
yeah.
up until the point when I stood in China then. And I thought like, well, I can do it anyway, you know? So
Yes.
I think what I definitely recognized is this concept, this idea of, well, yes, this anxiety is something that is impacting you, that is true, but you can still live your life. That is also true. Like more things can be true at the same time.
Mm.
And I think that's when I realized, like, oh, I can just do those things while I'm struggling. Because for the longest time, I
Yeah.
got to the point when I didn't do those things. Like
Yeah.
people would invite me, go out somewhere, do something, and I had to be like, I'm sorry. And it's often like last minute when I felt overwhelmed with anxiety, I was like, no, sorry, I need to leave here.
Mm.
And it's yeah, kind of tying this idea and again like the role you might have to play in any sort of relationship. It even happened in like dates. I remember I had one date and it was unfortunately going pretty well. But then on the way home, we were in a taxi and then we had dinner. And already during dinner, I noticed like my stomach wasn't doing so well.
Mm.
And um, the restaurant only had one bathroom, which I also noticed if I know the hotel or the restaurant has only one bathroom, I'm
I'm
stressed.
out. Yeah,
If
I'm
a
the
if
same.
a
I'm like, no.
if a restaurant has two bathrooms, I'm cool. Then I'm good. But the moment it has one, I'm like, I even notice myself if I would sit opposite you and have a conversation and the bathroom was maybe behind you, I would
Yeah.
often like just glance over your shoulder if I notice that someone is using the bathroom and I would like mentally like make a note, okay, now the bathroom is occupied,
Yes.
which meant like now I'm stressing.
Now it's time to panic.
Yeah. So yeah, we're already in the restaurant. I wasn't doing too well, and then we're on the way home,
Mm.
and I'm again stressing so much to the point where I was like, I'm really sorry about this. I asked the taxi driver to kind of just stop on the side of the road. And I said, I have to get out. I'm having like an anxiety attack right now. I can't. I'm sorry. And I just left. And she was like, oh, I've been dealing with anxiety as well. If you want, I can like be there for you or with you. And I was just like, no, no, sorry, I can't do this. And I just like got out, closed the door, and the taxi went on. And that was also the last time I saw her. You know,
Yeah.
probably not, probably not because of from her side, but from my side,
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is too too awkward. This is like the shame and everything that happened at the moment. I was like, oh, I can never see that person again.
Yeah, I can understand that. But
Yeah.
it's like a jail that we lock ourselves in, isn't it? It's like, nope, I've ruined that person now. So,
Yeah,
whereas
pretty
she
much.
probably would not have minded.
Exactly. I mean, even at the moment she offered it. And that's another thing. In the meantime, now over the last couple of years,
Mm.
I've been speaking very openly about my anxiety. And you know what? Maybe you're surprised, but I've only been received with love and understanding and compassion. Not
Mm.
one person was pointing a finger at me and laughing. Not one person was
Yeah.
looking at me and be like, "Oh, that's silly," or "That's stupid," you
Yeah.
know? And that's the thing. Of course, that's how people would react to someone opening up and be like, "Hey, I'm vulnerable."
Mm.
Um, and we know that,
Mm.
but in our mind, this anxiety is just taking a hold of us. So we're not able to just speak openly about it, to kind of share the stories, and because we're so worried of like how people will react and
Mm.
what people might think. And I mean, it's very common in all sorts of things, like it's creating your own company or like starting a new business, quitting a job and starting something new, creating this podcast.
Mm.
I'm sure that when you first started that, there was a healthy mix of emotions in the pot, probably, right?
Yeah. For
Because
sure.
that's how I felt when I started my podcast and my journey. And it was actually a friend of mine just reminded me about the story yesterday. It was almost. a very lucky accident how my whole podcast journey came to be.
Mm.
Because in the beginning of this year, I quit my job at the end of last year. And so at the beginning of the year, I traveled to spend New Year's Eve in Albania. And I sat there in the hotel and I did not leave the hotel essentially for a couple of days because I was super stressed and super anxious about the future. I was like, well, I quit my job now. I have to figure something out, right? I have to,
Yeah.
make use of that time and like find something to make money, whatever. So I was like really stressed. And obviously, the moment I'm stressed, it can easily impact my guts, and that's a
Mm.
very natural um, recipe for disaster with the toilet anxiety. So I didn't feel like I'm in a good place to kind of even explore Albania a little bit. I was in the capital in Tirana, and I would have loved to like explore the countryside because what I've seen since as well is like Albania must be stunningly beautiful, but I didn't feel strong enough to kind of go out and explore. So I was in the hotel. I felt like I need to do something to, create maybe an environment where I can work or get some skills that I could use. So I think it's Udemy or one of these apps, these online kind of learning platforms. I
Mm.
bought a course, an online course in communication, how to improve your communication skills, essentially.
Mm.
It cost like $20. I was like, great, I can do that. So at least, because I felt like it will keep me busy, at least I'm doing something. If I'm not working or doing anything that feels like I'm fulfilling a purpose, at least I'm doing something.
Mm.
And I'm doing this course, and for like a couple of weeks at this point, I'm back in Malta. And the course says, okay, now as part of the course, there's an exercise where you should just record yourself and talk about whatever. Talk about what you had for breakfast, talk about whatever is on your mind, and record it and then watch it back
Mm.
to see how do you communicate? How do you talk? Is there a lot of ams and buts and you know this kind of thing?
Mm.
And create that video and then just upload it to this private Facebook community that we have, right? Where other people in the community that are taking this course can feedback on it. And I was like, you know what? That's a pretty cool idea. I like this exercise. I did that. And I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? I was like, well, it's got to be
What
the
do I
toilet
know?
anxiety because
Yeah.
what do I know, right?
Yeah.
Plus, just when I came back from Bali 2 years ago, I did play with the idea of like, oh, maybe I should create like a podcast. Maybe I should record this and like talk about it, like tell my story, to maybe find others who have similar problems who can help me and give me tips how they dealt with it, or maybe inspire someone else
Mm.
and show them that they're not alone in it. And I did record this video 2 years ago when I came back from Bali, and I never did anything with it
Yeah.
because I was too anxious to share it with the world.
Mm.
And but yeah, I thought, you know what, maybe that's the topic to talk about. So I'm recording this video, a couple of minutes where I'm just basically talking about this because it's so easy for me because well, that's all I've been kind of experiencing emotionally for years now, right? And I'm recording this video and then I'm uploading it to this Facebook community group. And I step away from my computer and I go out and do stuff. And I come back a couple of hours later, log into Facebook, and I see notifications of, oh, your friends liked your reel. And I was like, huh?
What?
What's happened? I didn't upload anything. Like, what did they like? I didn't upload a video. And then this the world went silent and there was panic of like, oh shit.
Yeah. You
And I
upload it to your
realized
Facebook.
I uploaded it publicly to my Facebook and
No.
now everyone is seeing it, right? And
No.
I was like, oh no, this is the worst thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's the best thing that could have. Because now I was like, people were like, my friend privately texted me like, wow, you must have been really nervous uploading this video.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what are you talking about? What video?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, oops. And yeah, it just happened. I don't know. I'm not a very religious person, but it's a couple of trips to Bali, like it's difficult not to get a bit of a sense and a taste for spirituality and maybe
Yeah.
potential belief in something bigger. And with those things, I can't help but feel like that there's like flow and synchronicity and maybe the universe at play that's just really helping me to give me this nudge to kind of go over the edge a little bit because I'm not sure that I would have ever shared that so publicly. And uploaded it and maybe started this podcast journey and talking about it myself and eventually like leading to this conversation, man.
Mm.
But it was nerve-wracking, but it ended up being such a beautiful experience that has really since invited me to kind of continue on this path that I started right after this New York trip. When I was like, okay, I want to learn about this now. I want to understand what's happening with this anxiety. You know, what is it? What's happening in your, again, with the vagus nerve, like what's happening in your body, in your mind.
Mm.
And I think that's something that worked really well for me in the meantime. I When I was in Thailand, I did a workshop around the vagus nerve where I met someone who knew a lot about this. When I then afterwards talked to him, he said that he also does acupuncture.
Mhm.
And he mentioned that that's something that can often help, that there's a lot of trauma that is often sitting in the body. And he told me about this. And we did, I think, 4 sessions over the next 4 days
Mm.
where we just did like an acupuncture session. And that has helped me a lot since then.
Mhm.
And it's even things like for the longest time, I was worried maybe that toilet anxiety is a symptom of bowel cancer or, stomach cancer or an ulcer or whatever, like physiological, issue. So I
Mm.
thought maybe I should have like, uh, what's it called? A colonoscopy
Mm.
to kind of just check if medically I'm okay.
Yeah.
Um, But that was, oh, I planned that for like 1.5 years probably, from when I had the idea that I might as well do a colonoscopy to the point of like, but what if I am sick? Do I really want to know? And then like that's an
Yeah.
anxiety that kicked in. But when I eventually did the colonoscopy, it turned out I'm completely healthy, completely fine. There's no issue. It
Mhm.
was it was really bizarre because of course when you do any medical treatment and the doc tells you like, oh, you're, fit as a fiddle,
Mm.
you should be happy. But part of me was a little bit disappointed
Mm.
because I thought,
Confusion, because why do
eh,
I feel this way?
exactly, because I thought if you tell me that I have a massive issue, oh, there's cancer, but we recognize it early stage or whatever, at least I would have been like, oh, okay, at least now I know what's wrong with me.
Mm.
I thought like at least there would have been a reason. Now
Yeah.
that's again completely silly. And I much prefer not being sick and not having cancer, as you might imagine.
Yes.
But it left me obviously still with this challenge of like, oh, but there's still something wrong with me, evidently, because the anxiety exists for no apparent reason.
Mm.
Uh, yeah,
When you say something wrong with me and anxiety existing for no apparent reason, what do you feel is um like, do you think that there's a message to it? I know that a lot of people say everything happens for a reason and everything has meaning and, anxiety is a messenger and all this sort of thing. But do you think for you specifically, there's some kind of, you know, divine sort of path that you're on through that anxiety, or do you think it's just something that's, genetically within you for whatever reason and it just is what it is?
I think there's definitely a reason for those things. Yeah,
Mm.
I think I mentioned it in a conversation we had earlier about this, right? Where I said I actually feel like that the anxiety is a symptom. The
Hmm.
anxiety isn't the underlying problem or issue that you might have.
Hmm.
I think your anxiety is a symptom of some underlying problem that you're dealing with. And I believe that some, exceptions to this thought, to this rule, but I think that your brain at the end of the day tries to protect you,
Hmm.
right? Your brain
Yeah.
is there to keep you alive and to protect you. So if you're experiencing anxiety, maybe you need to ask yourself, well, what is this teaching me? What is this showing me that I need to deal with? And what is my brain trying to protect me from here? Because my mind and my brain wouldn't think like, oh, I'm gonna really fuck up Flo's day today
Mm.
and make him feel really miserable about this date and about, his life and, the ability to travel. Like my mind wouldn't do that, right? So I think your brain in those moments is really trying to protect you and tell you something.
Mm.
So when I started asking myself, like, well, what's happening here? Like, is there something I can learn from this? I realized that sometimes I would experience these anxiety episodes when I feel like, okay, now my stomach is getting a little bit upset and I feel like I might need to go to the bathroom. When I'm having conversations that are really annoying or frustrating with someone who's like, who I'm not on the same wavelength, where I'm not really feeling very comfortable here. Maybe it's a stressful situation like work, like a job that is just like, I've worked in like a corporate environment for years, and it's not something that has ever felt really fulfilling. It's just something that you do. There's meetings upon meetings, and then you know, you have to do work to summarize the meeting you just had, prepare for the next meeting. You're just like running around in circles, and it's something that obviously for so many people is creating stress and burnout and is contributing to like just a general feeling of being unwell.
Mm,
And I think that I recognize that I think my anxiety is trying to take me out of these certain situations because
mm,
at its core, the one thing that my total anxiety is doing is whenever there's any situation that is really stressful, it forces me to potentially use a bathroom where
mm,
I'm completely by myself. Right? In a
mm,
bathroom, I'm alone, it's peaceful, it's quiet, I'm
mm,
not impacted by anything else. So I started asking myself, is that maybe the lesson that I need to learn here, to
mm,
be a little bit more mindful and conscious of the situations I find myself in and maybe people I surround myself with. And
mm,
is there something I can learn from this? And since asking these questions, I think that I can now say that I'm perfectly capable of living with my anxiety in a way that feels almost as good that I would say like I'm not having the anxiety as much any longer. Like I remember in the past, I would always think about it to the point I would I could watch someone on TV run a marathon and I would ask myself like, oh, but what would they do if they would need to use the bathroom? Like I would
yeah,
even question it in others, like, oh, you're doing like a friend of mine was in Thailand and she took a sleeper bus
yeah,
from somewhere in Krabi for, I don't know, 12 hours or so, right?
mm-hmm,
And I asked like, well, how do you do it? Because
mm,
there's no toilet on board.
mm,
And she's like, well, you know, like, because I literally said, like, no, but how do you do it? Not in the sense, oh, you just take the sleeper bus, it goes here, there's a few stops along the way. I asked her, how is it possible? How are you able to do this? To just know, okay, I won't be able to use the bathroom for a few hours now.
mm,
And I would see these situations in others. I would watch others living their life and wondering, like, how can you do this
mm,
without having to worry about using the bathroom, etc., right?
mm,
And it was always on my mind to the point where now a few months ago, I was back in Southeast Asia and I traveled to Vietnam and I really wanted to do the Ha Giang Loop, which is in the very north of Vietnam. I think it's 350 kilometers. It's a little loop that you can drive with a motorcycle with absolutely stunning views in in nature close to the Chinese border. It's an incredible trip of a lifetime.
mm,
But in order to get there from Hanoi, you have to take a sleeper bus for like 7, 8 hours, and there's no toilet on board.
mm.
And I was stressed as a kid. Like a week before, I was already stressed because I knew, okay, this has to happen. I was thinking, oh, maybe I can take a private taxi or
Yeah,
whatever to get there. And it was like, no, it has to be this sleeper bus. And again, because in the meantime, I developed this sensation of, okay, let's do it anyway. Let's just challenge yourself. I'm starting to really enjoy these challenges almost.
yeah, yeah,
And like, so days ahead of this trip, I was already stressed.
mm,
The day of, in the morning, I'm out having breakfast
mm,
and I'm traveling with a good friend of mine there. And we're having breakfast. And on the way back, I could feel like, okay, my stomach is not well. And at this point, I already had to use the bathroom, I think 3 or 4 times.
mm,
And my friend, bless her, she's been nothing short of amazing with this during this trip and with this anxiety. Like she's so understanding
yeah,
and so supportive. But in those moments, again, I feel like you're just alone with it, right?
yeah,
And I'm super stressed. And we're kind of getting our things, and then we have to take a taxi from the hotel to the bus.
Mm.
And I'm getting in this taxi and I'm stressed. It's a 15-minute taxi ride and it's so stressful and I'm so overwhelmed looking out and like being obviously completely overwhelmed. And
Mm.
we get to the bus and there's a bit of commotion. Again, they don't speak English very well and they're so like, oh, this is your bus. And I'd be like, okay, let me just ask to use the bathroom just in case. I felt like I'm probably empty at this point because I've used it enough this morning. But again, it's just like just in case.
Yeah.
And then I went to the bathroom. I didn't have to go, and I go onto the bus. And it again, there wasn't a moment when I could be like, okay, we're here now. Let me kind of just like prepare myself for this emotionally.
Mm.
But I was just like, okay, straight to the bus. My friend already took two of these bunk beds next to each other, um, and I just sit down. And then like 10 minutes later, we were off, and and then we were just on the trip.
Mm.
Then it had to stop. I think an hour into the trip quite quickly because they had to kind of use some petrol. And that's when I actually just realized, oh, yeah, I might actually have to use the bathroom. So I did that and it was all good.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the rest of the trip, the next 7, 8 hours or whatever, it was just fine. We were just in there. We were having amazing chats,
Yeah.
um, playing some games. And yeah, she was great, like really entertaining me and helping me to kind of just like relax during this trip.
Mm.
And at the end, I got to we got to Hajang and then we're having dinner and I'm in this rooftop restaurant and I recorded a video in the morning before the trip started
Yeah.
because I felt like I wanted to do a bit before and after to be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling now before the trip, like
Yeah.
fueled with anxiety and stress. And I
Yeah.
wanted to record another video how I felt afterwards to kind of
Mm.
see like how everything went. And you know what the craziest thing is? The most stressful thing about the whole day was a 15-minute taxi ride
Mm.
from the Airbnb to the bus.
Mm-hmm.
The next 7, 8 hours in the bus were completely cool and a lot of fun and
Mm-hmm.
just great.
Mm.
And that was again like such a beautiful reminder of um, how at the end of the day the things are rarely as bad as we paint them and believe them to be.
Yeah, it's really the anticipation that is the worst part.
Mm.
I say this over and over, like even if there are, uncomfortable parts of the actual event, the anticipation and the mental distress that you put yourself through thinking about it is so much worse. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, there's so much nuance and like so many variables to the actual event, to the actual bus trip, to the, plane ride, whatever it is. There's so many other things that happen during that time. I think we spoke about this last time that like, there's so much involved in an experience. But when you are focusing on the anxiety of what might happen during that experience, you're only focusing on that one aspect of it, like what might go wrong. And, you obviously go down a rabbit hole of all the bad things that could happen, but you're
Mm.
still just focusing on, am I going to need the bathroom? What's going to happen if I need the bathroom? But then, when you're in the experience, there's your friend talking to you. There's, like the scenery that you're going past and so
For
much
sure.
happening. It's this life is so rich and we really do ourselves a disservice when we forget that, you know?
Yeah. I think obviously the biggest issue with anxiety is um, that you're either worried about the past, something that has happened, or the future, what might happen, right? So that's really the core of anxiety is this worry, this concern for whatever reason. And we're so much with our thoughts in the future or the past.
Mm.
And that's the thing, right? In the present, that's when all of these amazing moments happen, The trip with these moments, a trip like the Hajanglu with a friend who will be in your heart forever.
Yeah.
The the experiences that you make otherwise, like the moments that you find in presence and the beauty in these moments is something that we really, yeah, we keep from experiencing. Like it's really something that we don't allow ourselves to experience as much,
Mm.
which I think is one of the easiest or best ways to kind of help you with those anxiety moments, right? Like what I noticed is like working out physically, for example, just like going to the gym or moving your body or whatever in some form. Like when I think back of it, when I played paddle or any sort of sports, when I would watch someone and be wondering like, oh, how are they dealing with this? What if they might have to use a bathroom while they're doing this sport or this activity? I
Mm,
realize when I'm doing any activity, I rarely think about anything. You're
mm,
just in the moment. You're just completely immersed in the experience, of like obviously you have to think like, oh, is my position right? Do I have to play here? Like what are the opponents doing? So you're so immersed in the experience that you don't have time to be anxious. You don't worry about what happened
mm,
before or after. And
mm,
if anything, it's so kind of focused on that game, on that experience that that's such a great way of like getting out of your mind and into your body. I
mhm,
think that's really one of the key things that has helped me to enjoy this presence more. It's such a beautiful reminder to be more present, right? And there's once you're in your body, when you focus on lifting weight or playing a sport, you have to be in your body. There's no
mm.
other way.
So would you say that that's a good doorway for somebody who's struggling with toilet anxiety or, indeed any kind of anxiety to make their way out into the world to go, with something physical to start with?
Yeah, I think the two things that have helped me the most is talking about it, sharing it openly.
Hmm.
Because sometimes even just explaining to someone what you're experiencing is taking the edge out of it a lot. Because in our mind,
It's so,
like you're spinning that thread to like a never-ending story. Like it's
yeah.
insane how crazy because you have so many thoughts every moment, right? That your anxiety is like jumping from one to the other, and it's just like getting bigger and bigger, and you're kind of creating bigger and bigger disasters.
Mm.
Whereas if you're speaking about it and you're hearing your own words, you realize like, oh, that actually doesn't make any sense. Then that's not even something to be worried about. Like in our mind, it's crazy. But
Yeah.
when or like it's true, it could happen. But
Hmm.
when we actually talk about it, we realize like, oh, it's actually not that bad.
Mm.
So talking about it and making it a little bit more real, I think is very important because if anything, it creates accountability for
Hmm.
yourself because now you talked about it, you made it real. Because sometimes I I I feel like whatever's happening in our heads isn't real.
Mm.
Only when we speak it, when we say it and out loud into the world, that's when we make our thoughts real,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And with anything, it could be ideas, but even like our emotions. The moment we be like, no, I am anxious. I am struggling with toilet anxiety. I am uncomfortable in these situations. Because then it's happening, it's real, and now we can create a little bit of accountability around this.
Mhm.
And yeah, the second part is activity, any sort of movement, and because we want to get out of our head, right? That's the issue with anxiety, that we let our anxiety, our mind just spiral into disaster, into catastrophes.
Yeah.
And it's either physical exercise, breath has helped me a lot,
Mm.
doing different breathwork exercises, and even just like focusing. It's super tough, obviously, like meditating and breathing. Like I've tried meditating, and if it's not anxiety, I'm thinking about my shopping list, or I realize like, oh yeah, the one light in the bathroom isn't working. I might have to replace that. Like my mind is
Yeah.
it's I think for a lot of people, your mind is just wandering when you meditate. But
Yeah.
um, you also realize that there will never, if anyone is struggling with anxiety or anyone is feeling overwhelmed and wants to take a step towards getting better, there is not one thing you can do that will fix you. There is not one miracle cure.
Mm.
Um, like Imodium, if you have toilet anxiety, might help,
Mm.
to at least, maybe prevent the urge of needing a bathroom. But it's not like a tic tac, it messes up your guts. Like it completely um, blocks you, right? So it's not something that is healthy that you should eat a Smarties. So there
Mm.
is not a miracle cure. There will not be one podcast that you listen to that will be like, oh, now I get it. Now I'm healed.
It's totally gone
It's
now.
exactly. There
Yeah.
is not this one thing, but it's a journey that you step on. You might have to be meditating for years until you be like, oh, now I'm getting really good at this meditating thing. Or now you recognize breath work and you realize, oh, maybe this acupuncture could help, like I did, right? Or you can go to different retreats or whatever it is. At the end of the day, it's a journey that you step on,
Mm,
a healing journey that will also never end. But
mm,
it can be quite intimidating, I think, when you tell someone like, oh yeah, you're now stepping towards a healing journey that will never end.
mm.
But it's also a
Have
beautiful
fun.
journey, right? It's exactly. Good luck. See you at the
Yeah.
end. But it's also a beautiful journey where you learn so much about yourself. And I think that we're only presented with the challenges that we're able to handle. And I do believe that there might be a bigger calling, like you asked earlier. And I think that my anxiety for me is that, I think it has allowed me to step into a very scary world of like putting yourself out there, recording videos of yourself and podcasts about your life and your journey. But it's something that has brought me so much more positive
Mm,
things in my life, the negative things. And I think looking back, don't you think that it's usually those really tough moments in your life
mm,
that result in the biggest positive changes in your life? When you look back, it's usually those moments that, for me, it was this crisis point in New York
yeah.
that really kickstarted a journey that changed my life forever. Like,
Mm,
of course, it's not been a linear path of just like happiness and improvements. There was a lot of up and downs, and some of the downs were far deeper than anything I've experienced before.
mm,
But it's those tough moments that really challenge us to get better. And if we just ask ourselves, like, what is this situation teaching me,
mm,
rather than victimizing ourselves and feeling really bad for ourselves for too long? Because it's also okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel really shitty about your life and to really be upset with those things as well for some period. And
mm,
it's good to feel those emotions because I think you need those to kick your own butt and kind of get out of this, get better. Because I think it's with us. So yeah, I
yeah.
think that's what I've learned. It's a journey that you're on, but you're also not alone in this. There's others
Mm,
that can help, and that's still something I'm learning today. I think sharing my own story is one thing,
mm,
but also just asking maybe for help and for support and taking it is something that I need to learn right now in my life. I think maybe it's a male issue, if you
yeah.
want, this maybe lack of ability to admit weakness in some sense. I mean, obviously, I know there's not weakness in
Yeah.
the sense of it, but yeah, there's something, I think from a male perspective in dealing with something like this that feels sometimes a little bit tough to just accept that I might have to ask support. I might not be great at this. I might not be, you
Mm,
know, capable of just handling this like men are supposed to, quote
mm.
unquote. So yeah.
How's your relationship with yourself changed through all of that? Have you, has your perception of yourself changed, or what has been most noticeable for you about your relationship with you through all of this?
Well, I definitely think that being able to speak so openly and showing this side of me, this vulnerable side, and being able to say, listen, I'm not doing okay,
Mm,
is something that I became quite proud of.
mm,
I think for the longest time in my life, and I'm not saying that it's still not the case in certain situations, this people pleasing that you mentioned earlier has been a big factor for me, right? I felt like I don't want to be an inconvenience. I don't want to kind of, whatever I did, I often felt like I'm doing it to please others.
mm.
And it's even something as simple as friends asking, like, oh, how are you doing? You say, I'm good. How are you? Good. It's a very
It's a
simple
flex.
conversation at the start, and you're just like, ah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Now I'm able to have conversations where I'd be like, when people ask me, how are you? I can say, I'm not doing well right now.
Yeah.
And it's, it usually takes people by surprise. They're a little bit, they're like, okay, how do I handle this? Because it might feel like that they have to ask, oh, but what's wrong? What's happening? The truth is, you know, and most people will, right? Most people will ask you and be like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to talk about it? But very often I would just tell them like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm good. Like there's, I feel maybe a little bit lost in life right now, or there's something happening
Mm,
and I'm not feeling too well, but it's okay. I guess, it's part of it. I've learned in the past that
mm,
not being okay and being in really tough situations has actually resulted in really positive moments down the line.
mm, mm,
So yeah, I think just being able to be a little bit more honest and open is something where the perception of myself has changed a lot.
mm,
I want to say that I've also started being more supportive to myself and allowing myself to be vulnerable and be kind to myself. But it's still, that's a never-ending story for me, I think. And there's
mm.
moments like now, after when you realize, okay, I can't work in this corporate environment any longer. I need to find something else, but I'm still kind of searching. And
Yeah.
during this year, when I've been like on this path of finding this meaning and maybe this purpose, I caught myself often like being like, oh, you're not doing enough, maybe not studying enough or doing anything to kind of learn or become better and like being a little bit harsh with myself, being like, oh, you're lazy, you're a lazy piece of whatever, you haven't done anything today, instead of just being like, hey, I can see that this is a bit of a tough period for you,
Mm,
you know? Because it feels like, because if I it's so subjective, right? If I tell someone else about the year that I've been experiencing with maybe, or this story of anxiety in general,
mm.
and I'm telling them, oh, I traveled to New York and I traveled to Bali and I did all of those things and struggled with the anxiety and
Yeah.
everything. And someone else would look at you and be like, what are you complaining about? Like
Yeah.
I would love to have your life sort of thing, right? And
Yeah.
again, it took me a long time until I realized both things can be true, right? You can be very privileged. You can live a very, you know, good life, and you maybe should be grateful for a lot of those things, but you can also be not okay and feel overwhelmed and stressed and unhappy and lost.
Mm,
Like both of these things can be true. And you can feel, like you don't want to get out of bed for a week and feel really overwhelmed. And you might just look at, talk to yourself and be like, hey, I know it's tough,
mm.
you know, instead of being like, oh, you're a lazy piece of shit. You haven't done anything. You should get out. You're not working out. You're not eating. Like, because, yeah, when we're in those moments, all I want to do is stay in bed, eat pizza, and like,
Yeah.
do all of the things that I should be doing that I
Yeah.
know that aren't good for me.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I'm also like just giving myself shit for it when I'm like, come on,
Yeah.
if you're just being a bit more kind to yourself. So that's what I think it has definitely taught me.
Mm.
Um, I'm not 100% there yet. I'm still sometimes a bit of a dick to myself, unfortunately. But
Aren't we all?
I'm working on it.
Good. I I want to know what your piece of advice would be if you could go back to, I want to say the you that was in New York. If you could travel back in time to that pub bathroom and tell yourself something, what would it be?
I'm not sure that I would say anything. Maybe the only thing I would do is just hug myself.
Oh, I love that.
And because I think the one thing, as I mentioned now, that is really true is these tough moments will they will put you in a better place in your life. If you just start on this journey, you will eventually be in a better place.
Mm,
The only issue is that doesn't help you while you're in it.
mm,
So if someone is really struggling, you tell them like, listen, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, but this is great. This is an opportunity for you to kind of improve your life and work on yourself. And down the line, you will look back at this moment and
mm,
you will be grateful for it. Because as you're experiencing in some occasions, the biggest challenge and the worst moment in your life, the one thing you don't want to hear is someone telling you like, oh, it's good that you're experiencing this.
mm,
Because while you're struggling, while you're suffering, it's just tough.
mm,
So I feel like there's nothing I could say to my former self that would help them in the moment other than just a hug
mm-hmm,
to maybe show them that there can be this feeling of like support for myself, this understanding of it's okay that you're going through this. You're still a good human. You're still enough. You're still loved, and yeah. I think that's the one thing that has been underlying in a lot of these issues with anxiety. I've told myself so many times that I'm broken,
Mm,
that I'm not well. I've never been suicidal, but I would lie that the topic of suicide hasn't come up as one consequence of these downward spirals. When you're like, well, because if this is life, and if like all of your life is so horrible, then in this anxiety, suicide sometimes feels like the only reasonable consequence, when in reality it isn't, right?
mm,
And I think that comes down to the self-love you know, that we don't allow ourselves to experience.
mm. Yeah, there's a lot of self-abandonment in the anxiety spiral of like, if this is what it's going to be, I can't be with myself
Exactly.
through it. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. That just that sense of being with yourself and hugging yourself and like just being there is, I've never had that answer before that I wouldn't say anything. Love it. It's great. Um, where can people connect with you? You've got your Grow with the Flow podcast. Is there any other spots where people can find you?
That's it. I have to Grow with the Flow podcast on Spotify. I have an Instagram account as well, Grow with the Flow, that goes with it. And I think especially this space, these are the two main places where people can find me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm really grateful that you speak up about this stuff. I love when people talk about toilet anxiety, because I find myself healing with every time I hear someone else talking about it. It's so brave, and I love your honesty, your vulnerability, and your sense of humor and your perspective on it is really beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. I think I really love how you hold the space during those conversations. Like from the moment we connected first, it felt just so easy to talk to you about this. And I think that's really what a lot of this is all about. And I think the one thing that this anxiety story has really taught me is that how what a beautiful invitation it can be to connect with others
Mm,
through, sharing it very openly, because the people that I open up to, they usually really appreciate it, that I'm showing this vulnerability, because it shows trust and
yeah.
love in some form, right? For me, it's really, if I tell you about my anxiety story so openly and vulnerably, it means that I really appreciate you.
Mm,
And yeah, you creating this space and this platform, even for others to kind of deal with their anxiety, I think is such a beautiful thing. So yeah, it was such a pleasure to be here.
thank you, Flo. Thank you for listening to the Us Anxious Folk podcast, the podcast for the chronically overwhelmed, perpetually panicked, anxious folk in all of us. If you would like to find more about me, you can find me on YouTube at Lauren Rose or on Instagram at Lauren R_Rose.